practical? Where's the practicality in that one? It is actually not based on any practicality. It's based on the control of the Lord. Because the Lord controls everything. He is the source of all. What is that verse? Ishwar Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Adir Govinde Sarva Karna Karnam. He is the Sarva Karna Karnam. Every cause that is happening, it has an initial cause coming from the supreme cause, who is the Lord Himself. So what we see and experience in our lives is simply the apparent cause, but behind the apparent cause is the remote cause. The remote cause is the Lord. And the Lord works for His devotees in one way and for the non-devotees in another way. Why? Because the devotees take shelter of Krishna and depend on Him, and the non-devotees take shelter of Krishna's external energy and try to manipulate that energy in order to fulfill their desires, or even to protect them. Just like, a person might think, if I have a lot of locks on my doors, if I have a lot of guns, and if I have a lot of soldiers, then I'm invincible. So they make all these, people make arrangements on different levels to protect themselves. But no one can protect anyone, because no one has the capability of protecting themselves, nor can they protect anyone else, unless it's sanctioned by the Lord. He's the indwelling supersoul in the heart of all living entities. And Krishna can simply dictate something, and it happens. Parasya Shakti Virahaya Suyate Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriya Cha. All His energies are working completely under His control. There is nothing independent of Him. But from the external vision of the conditioned souls, or even for those who practice devotional service, we may not be able to see Krishna's hand in everything. But it's there. It's we call it the unseen hand, behind the scenes. But He's working just simply to fulfill the desires of the living entities. So those who want to take shelter of Him and engage in His devotional service, He says, I give complete protection. Not just partial, but complete protection. And those who want to manipulate the material energy and try to enjoy that material energy through various arrangements they make, that energy, because the energy is also an energy of Krishna, it's called Bahiranga Shakti, it's very powerful energy. When one tries to control the energy of the Krishna, they get controlled by that energy. Sometimes people say, well, I want to enjoy this, but then they develop a habit for that enjoyment, and they get controlled by it. Just like we see people think, I'm going to smoke cigarettes and I'm going to become, happy or feel some pleasure in doing that. But then they become addicted to that, and they can't give it up. They become controlled by that. And that happens on all levels. People will become immersed or involved with a particular aspect of material energy, and they think they're controlling it, but they become attached to it, and that attachment controls them. And then when it's time to give it up, they can't, because it becomes a feature of their attachment. Attachment means one is forced. Prabhupada uses the word nechong. One is forced to act in a way that is given according to one's connection with that material energy. So Kamsa, he is overwhelmed with fear. In fact, as you read this particular narration, he can't even sleep at night. And all he's thinking about is Krishna, or how to destroy Krishna. He becomes absorbed in Krishna. He's actually Krishna conscious. And I think Narada Muni is the one that makes this statement. He says, actually, the energy of anger in directing to Krishna is more powerful than any energy that can absorb one in the absolute truth. So those who become really angry at Krishna, you see, what was that, Dantarvarka? He was so angry at Krishna. Krishna killed his friend Shishupal, and he made his program to avenge the death of Shishupal. And so he wanted to kill Krishna. So Krishna was on his way to Mathura, and he stopped Krishna in the way, and he challenged Krishna to a fight. Now that narration is a quick narration. Usually Krishna plays around for a while, has a little fun. But with Dantarvarka, he didn't. And Dantarvarka became angry and swung his club with all his power and hit Krishna in the chest, and it was like being hit with a flower garland. Had no effect at all. We hear that many times. When Dhenukasura wanted to somehow or other get angry at Balaram, came running with full force with his back legs. Donkeys have powerful legs, and he kicked Balaram in the chest, and Balaram didn't even notice it. It was like it didn't even happen. When he did it the second time, Balaram thought, this guy's just disturbing now. So, yeah, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not affected by anyone's. So when he did that, Krishna took out his club and smashed the club of Dantarvarka and knocked it out of his hand. Now Dantarvarka is so angry at Krishna, even without his weapons, he came charging at Krishna. His anger made him forget the fact that, you might need a weapon. But it says that he charged with his red-hot anger. That was his weapon. So this anger, which is a result of becoming fearful of something that you determine is detrimental to yourself, is a very powerful force. When a person is fearful, you try to talk to them, or try to mitigate their fears, or you try to speak something that will help allay their fears. Very hard to do. Very hard to do. Fear overwhelms a person's consciousness, and only when they they can somehow or other be convinced in one way or other that fear is something that they shouldn't be concerned about, only then can you talk to them. Fear is so Kamsa, he's so fearful, and he can't sleep at night, and he's having delusions. He looks in the mirror, and he can't even see himself in the mirror. He sees his shadow, and in the shadow there's holes in the shadow. These are all signs that soon he would be destroyed by Krishna. So he's getting all these evil omens letting him know his destiny. And he's just so fearful. Now, he's thinking, and he's making arrangements. And his followers are saying, Kamsa, you're the best. There's no one that can, overcome you. We've seen it. We are your followers, and we will do whatever you say. Don't have any worry. Your success is our prowess. And they criticize the demigods are useless. It says that they say the demigods, well, they speak nicely, but when it comes to actually fighting, they're impotent. That's what they just said in this verse. So we don't have any worry. Brahma's, he's meditating. Shiva went to the forest. Vishnu's hiding in the hearts of all living entities. So these demigods, they're powerful, but we don't have nothing to worry about them because they're too busy. So just send us on the mission, and we will do whatever we can to please you. And so what they do, this is the original child abuse program here. So we talk about child abuse today, but look at this. This is nothing. What happened today is nothing compared to this. They just went from village to village looking for little children that were under 10 days old, and they were just destroying the kids, killing them. So Prabhupada mentions this in so many of his lectures, that the demons will do anything. The demons will do anything to fulfill their own desires. So what is an actual demon? That's nicely described, or completely described in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. They're envious. They're always making plans to gain more material power and material things. They don't follow any rules and regulations. They make their own rules and regulations. And if they want to somehow or other look nice within the world to other people, they give charity. They give charity. They give in charity. Yeah, yeah. So you'll see, even big demons are people who are, because they think they have an understanding that if I give charity, then people will like me. They buy people's confidence, they buy people's favors by giving in charity, and they support many different charitable organizations like that. It looks really nice. And so this is Krishna explains the qualities of the demons here. Now Prabhupada mentions one thing in the purport, which is somewhat related to what the demons are saying, that we should take your instructions and immediately act on them, because if we wait, it may be too late. So Prabhupada says there are three things should not be neglected. What is that? Fire, disease, and debts. And what does that mean? Is that if you're putting out a fire and you leave a little bit of a smoking cinder or some kind of flame there, something, it can again ignite and spread. If you're treating a disease and you get it mostly well, you don't finish the disease, then by neglect, the tendency the disease will again come back in full force. And that, Prabhupada makes this point, interest, compound interest. So if you have a debt with people who are in kind of business world, there's usually some interest involved. So if you don't pay your debt, and then the interest just increases and the debt increases also, like that. So these three things, it's a moral instruction. It's coming from Chandramauli Pandit, like that. So in our practice of Krishna consciousness, also there's this element of completion, that when we chant the holy names of the Lord, we, in order to get the mercy of Krishna's holy name, the full mercy, one has to be absorbed in that chanting. In other words, you can chant inattentively, but how much will you get from that chanting? Very little. And we can chant with, becoming distracted by so many things, but we're not really practicing. So spiritual life means to be absorbed, whatever you're doing. Whether you're cooking, cleaning, chanting, worshipping, opening the windows. Whatever you're doing, you should be absorbed in what you're doing, so you do it nicely. Don't forget to open all the windows. Yeah. So the idea is that a little inattention, because when you say bhakti, bhakti means to absorb oneself in three aspects of oneself: mind, body, and words. So where it starts with the mind, and the mind engages the words, and then, of course, activities or body, like that. So if one of those is not completely engaged, then one is somewhat not, what we say, fully engaged in devotional service. The most important thing is the mind, of course. Engage the mind in devotional service. But mind is chanchala. Chanchala hi mana Krishna pramiti balabhadridhan tasyaham nigamanyaye mayoridam saduska. Mind is going this way and that way. The mind, sometimes when you try to control the mind, what happens? The mind becomes uncontrolled more. It doesn't like to be controlled. So one has to somehow, just like we read the beautiful prayers of Raghunath Das Goswami, when he's actually trying to control his mind, what does he say? My dear mind. He addresses him as a good friend. My dear mind, go to Vrindavan, absorb yourself in hearing about the glories of the Lord, worship that person who takes care of cows, and associate with those persons who are living in Vrindavan. In other words, he entreats his mind in a very sweet way. You know, you're just bothering me by giving me all, so why don't you just go to Vrindavan? This is where I want to be, so if you can go to Vrindavan, I'll come with you. In fact, I'll take you there, but if you don't want to stay there, then it's a problem. So this mind has to be engaged fully in devotional service. Krishna speaks a lot about that in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. One should elevate themselves by the mind and not degrade themselves. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. One who controls the mind is the best of friends. One who fails to do that mind is very enemy. Sometimes we talk about friends and enemies, but Prahlad Maharaj gives the formula. There's no such thing. He said when he's speaking to his father, Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyakashipu saying to his little son, who is not obeying him, not following his dictates, he's saying, you're siding with my enemy. You're siding with my enemy, because he made Vishnu his enemy. And Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear father, your only enemy is your own mind. That's all. That's all. And then he went on to explain, of course, friends and enemies, like that. So when the mind is controlled, the super soul is already reached, and when the super soul is already reached, one mind is peaceful and happy. Like that. It's not diverted away like that. Something we see in the history of great personalities, how by the power of their mind they've been able to overcome some of the most difficult situations in life. Saving others, saving themselves, getting through very difficult. Did anybody ever read the story of Viktor Frankl? You've read that, huh? Yeah. Being in a concentration camp during World War II, he's a Jew, he's being persecuted. How he was able to survive and overcome that. Amazing. Of course, he had some connection with God, but the power of his mind was so fixed that he was able to somehow or other get through all that suffering and torture that was imposed upon him. I don't know the whole story. Maybe you can say something.
The Jews, of whom he was one, if they... This is worse. Hare Krishna. Yeah, if a particular prisoner chose to despise and hate and fear his tormentors, you know, the Nazis, the Gestapo, then they quickly perished.
Then they what?
Quickly went down. You know, they quickly... But he chose to actually pity his captors, and he befriended some of them. And they actually helped him get through the experience. And because of that choice, the famous line from his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is, the last of the human freedoms is the freedom to choose one's attitude. And so it's not so far away from Tatenu Kampam, because that's the attitude of gratitude that gives us the right to inherit the kingdom of God. So he chose to be positive in his experience and just try to make the best of it, and he survived.
Yeah, and he somehow drew, or he elicited the sympathy of some of them, like that. Yeah, power of the mind, directed in the right way. not just power of the mind, but directed in the right way. One can choose, the ultimate principle of the mind is one can choose one's attitude. So what is the devotee's attitude? Attitude of what? What is the word that rhymes with attitude? Gratitude. So when things go wrong, just develop attitude of gratitude. Of course, we should keep that I have been fortunate. I have been given a chance to associate with this most powerful movement of spiritual life. Here's a chance to solve all my problems and actually connect myself with the Supreme Lord in devotion. I am surrounded by so many others who are doing the same thing. And then we can go down the list and see all the mercy that we were received in different forms. And then whatever little things are not right, apparently not right, it doesn't really, you can somehow get over that, or somehow or other deal with that without becoming, what we say, unhappy, or what we say, overly tormented like that. Satchidananda Maharaj says that a man who has no tolerance, even when he breaks his shoelace, he gets unhappy. So, using that example of how, so to appreciate Krishna consciousness is actually the way to really benefit from Krishna consciousness. But that appreciation helps you to see what Krishna has given you, and what more things you may not even be able to discover unless you develop that appreciation. When we're unhappy, this is not right, he's not right, she's not right, I'm not right, nothing's right. Then we can't see what's right. There's a lot of other things that are right. Just like, again, I'll say it again, I had this experience about 2 weeks ago. I came from Toronto to Cleveland. And my main luggage, the big one, when I had everything in it, they lost my luggage. And we've been searching ever since. I still haven't got it back. So at one point, we were in Toronto together. I hope you came out okay. Because anyway, at first there was a little disturbance, and I'm thinking, okay. But then I happened to turn on the news. And in the news, there was this situation where this one family goes to this one resort place every year, and they go boating. But they decided to go to another place, a different place this year for their vacation. He took the whole family, and there were other people on this boat. It was like a little craft. And there was children and their kids. It was like 9 people in the whole family. And they went on the boat. And the boat caught this whirlpool, and somehow or other they couldn't control the boat, and the boat capsized. And they all went under, practically all of them. Some of them survived. Out of 42 people, I think 17 survived. So after reading that, and of course I wasn't feeling happy about it, but I was thinking, I lost my luggage. See, that's really terrible. In other words, sometimes when we look at the misfortunes of others, and we look at our own misfortunes, we think, it's not so bad. I can somehow deal with that. And it helps us to, it's a negative way of feeling positive about your own situation. It's reverse psychology, but it has an effect. Now sometimes we get overwhelmed with what's not right, but when we actually look how much Krishna has actually given us, we can really be grateful. And as Suresh Prabhu said, Tate Nukampa verse, yeah, one prays, thank you, my dear Lord, you could have made it worse for me, but you only gave me a small token of what I actually deserve. So the devotee thinks like that. A devotee thinks like that, and devotee can go on in devotional service despite whatever happens or doesn't happen. So, like that. And be in a proper attitude also. Okay. Any questions or comments? I can speak some more, but I thought I'd open it up for questions. Maharaj, you want to give a few comments on the topic?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Wonderful class. I was also thinking that this is the first step probably in one's spiritual advancement, that one sees everything as Krishna's mercy, rather than thinking in terms of duality. Otherwise, if one is in duality and one is, pushed left and right, one cannot really go forward.
Yeah. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says one of the causes of suffering is trying to push back the suffering, or being attached to duality. This is good, this is bad. So we don't use bad and good. We say this is favorable, this is unfavorable. That's a way of devoting. This will not help my Krishna consciousness, this will help my Krishna. So as Lord Chaitanya says, what is that verse? Advaita Dvaita Badram Sakali Saman E Manda E Badra E Brahmas. I forgot the whole verse. Lord Chaitanya speaks in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Some people say this is good, and some people say this is bad. But I say this is all mental speculation. Everything in the material world is bad. That's what he ends that saying. But things become transcendentally enlivened when those things in the material world are engaged in devotional service. And then what is good, what is bad, can be purified and used for serving the Lord. And what is good can bring one more closer to Krishna consciousness. So devotees have to see what is favorable. Is this favorable or is this unfavorable? Like that. And that is the principle of surrender. Sanatana Goswami gives 6 points of what it means to surrender. Sometimes devotees say, well, I'm surrendered. But are you really surrendered? These are the 6 points. If you're doing these 6 things, 3 is an activity and 3 is an attitude or a state of mind. The activities are accept everything favorable, reject everything favorable. Oh, this is favorable. I like this prasadam, but I know it's not going to be good for me. It becomes unfavorable. Okay. That's like I like pizza, but and sometimes people want to give me pizza more than I can handle it. So I just say, well, I like your pizza, but it's definitely going to be unfavorable for me. So, especially for us old guys, we know that more and more. So, favorable and unfavorable have to be discriminated between in order to make progress in devotional service. Anukulena and pratikul. Sanatana Goswami gives the formula. The 3 things that are more or less an attitude is Krishna is my only protector, Krishna is my only provider, and Krishna is my only maintainer. The word only is there in each one of those statements. So depending on Krishna, we spoke that at the beginning, Rake Krishna More Ke, More Krishna Rake Ke. Krishna wants to protect you, no one can do anything to harm you. So that is a principle of surrender. Sanatana Goswami doesn't say surrender, he says complete surrender. And Krishna is my only protector. Whatever I need, he will provide. If he doesn't provide, I don't need it. And of course, there's the due course of time program. We make some endeavor, maybe to get something we need. Sometimes we get things for ourselves, sometimes we get things for our service. So Krishna is the provider or the arranger to provide whatever we need in both cases like that. He decided to take my luggage away, I guess I didn't need it. Or he was teaching me something, you got too much. So there's always some message in there. Or maybe I committed an offense and therefore I'm getting a reaction for the offense, which nullifies the effects of the offense by getting a reaction like that. So whatever happens, there's a reason behind it for a devotee. And the last one is that Krishna is my maintainer. I try to maintain myself, but I can't do that. He's providing what I need when I need it, like that. And then the last one is Dainya. Dainya is another point of both the conscious effort, conscious state of mind, and also an activity in devotion that is called humility. So humility is the final one he mentions, which sums up everything. That without humility, these other five really will not merely manifest completely or properly like that. So these are the 6 things of surrender. So sometimes you'd be thinking, well, what does it mean to surrender? Check with these 6 things and you can see which one you need to work on, you need to increase, like that. Surrender is an active thing. It's not a passive thing. And never think I'm surrendered. Surrender means moment to moment. You could be surrendered one moment, and the next moment something's different will happen, which causes you maybe to be less surrendered. So that conscious effort, and what is the mood of surrender? How best can I serve in this particular situation I'm in right now? How best can I serve? And that's the mood of surrender. What do I have to do at this point, right now, this particular minute, to engage in devotional service? Like that. Like that. So the example would be like, I'm speaking and you're listening. So for you, surrender means to listen. That's all. That's what it means. If you're not listening, you're not surrendered. Of course, I'm not saying I'm so good at speaking, but I'm saying that just as a principle, this is how it works. This is how the principle works. So just use that as an example. And how every moment we have a chance to become Krishna conscious, or how every moment we have a chance to take shelter of the external energy. So it's like that. And when we develop the mood of surrender, then it becomes more routine and natural. Then it becomes part of you, and then your surrendering activities become part of you. And it's not so much a conscious effort. It becomes part of your activities in the day-to-day life. The more you practice that mood. Yes, you wanted to say something.
No,
you look like you.
What is that? There's a saying. I don't know if this is Shastra or what, but it starts with watch your desires. Because they become your thoughts? Oh, it starts with thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know how that goes?
Watch your thoughts become your words, watch your words become your actions, watch your character become your character, because it becomes your destiny.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Nice. It starts with thoughts. Thoughts are expressions of desires, right? So, yeah. A devotee is somewhat introspective, yes. You had a question? Oh no. Oh, I thought I saw it. Thank you, nice point. Any other questions or comments? Sri Guru? Yeah. See, devotees are humble. They always want to defer to the other person.
We were discussing this book about, I forgot the name, who survived the camp, and I remember also the article how he wrote about people who were surviving, and he said that all of them, they had a very specific goal, and that goal helped them to survive.
In the concentration?
In the concentration camp, like either they still had some family, or they had the goal which they really wanted to accomplish. So the purpose for what they wanted to live.
Right. So their purpose was not simply to avoid suffering, but their purpose was something positive. Yeah. The purpose, our purpose is positive, and how best we can engage in devotional service. That's a positive thing. If we're always trying to avoid Maya, I mean, there's an element of that, but if that becomes the feature, then we don't really fully engage in devotional service. And you actually become less active because you become so afraid of falling into Maya that you don't do much, or you... Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, that's a nice point. That's really a nice point. How one who has a goal and works towards that goal, whatever, if that's strong enough, it pushes away everything else to the side. Yeah.
Because Prabhupada's goal was to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere at once, as he told Harishari once. So Hayagriva used to tell the story, the late Hayagriva, when he was at 26 Second Avenue, one morning in the storefront, he just walked toward the window from inside, and was just looking at 2nd Avenue, and what a hellhole it was. Garbage smells and cacophonous sounds and just bums, homeless people, or whatever he was thinking. And he was thinking, this is horrible. This is a horrible place. And as an example of how Prabhupada could read minds, Swamiji walked up in back of him, put his hand on Hayagriva's shoulder and said, one day you will see all this as Vaikuntha, Krishna's place, a place to excavate, resurrect the Krishna consciousness, even in the most hellish situation.
Yeah, that's good.
So he chose to see it like that, because he had a mission, he had a purpose, he had a goal. Therefore, or else how could he tolerate it? It was intolerable, the whole thing.
Prabhupada was seeing, Krishna and everything in Krishna. We entitled one of our books called Holy Jail. It seems like what is the word? Oxymoron? Oxymoron means two words that don't work together, just like a happy marriage. That's I'm just sorry about that one. Or what is it? Business ethics? Or a small crowd? There's a whole bunch of them. So yeah, but holy jail means that in the jail people are engaged in devotional service, so they're bringing Krishna consciousness into that atmosphere, and the atmosphere is changing, at least wherever that is happening. So yeah, Prabhupada used to say, wherever Krishna consciousness is going on, that's a tirtha. That's a holy place. Nice point. Anything else? Okay. Jai Baladev.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your class. You made a lot of nice, wonderful points. I'll try to narrow some of the points down. Well, you were mentioning Sri Raghunath Goswami, his book Srimad Shitsha, Preaching to the Mind. Something I got from actually Vishrambar Sheath, the Mridanga player, something he said on the internet, but basically we see in the scriptures that the devotees are mentors because they preach to the mind, and demons are tormentors because they allow the mind to preach to them. So that's one point I appreciated when Vishrambar said the mind preaches us, so we have to preach to it. So, but my question is related to the point you were mentioning that if we try to control the material energy, then we become controlled by it. And you were mentioning that student in Thailand who was on the internet for like 70 72 hours or something. So there's a quote that says, detachment is not that you should own nothing, but that nothing should own you. And we see in the material world that they're devoted to promoting Facebook. We're devoted to promoting Facebook. And so my question is regarding this faith, you said accept things that are favorable. So we see in the scriptures that the demons, when they were associating with the demigods, they say they're unfavorable association. But then when they associate with Mohini, they said she's favorable association. So my question is that usually we develop faith in things that arouse our senses, not knowing that it actually might increase our inertus. So how do we know what association is really favorable? Because that's where racism comes in, sexism, things that arouse our false ego, our senses.
Yeah, well, it comes back to that point. What's favorable for devotional service? What is unfavorable? That you have to know. And you have to know by the words of the Shastras, which teach you the principles of things that are favorable and things that are unfavorable. And through your own experience, you also learn what is favorable and what unfavorable. If you're attached, sometimes you never learn. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So, and again, because the society is organized in such a way is that if we always try to solve our own problems by ourselves, we may sometimes fall short of getting the correct results. But therefore, asking devotees. Sometimes Prabhupada would ask one of his assistants or servants, is this a good plan? What do you think? Or what do you think about this? He would do that just to see how they were thinking like that. And when it came to practical things, sometimes he would take their advice in terms of whether we should go here, whether we should go here. So, yeah, even a great person will take advice from others. It says there's three kinds of leaders. And one who asks his advice but doesn't take it, one who never asks his advice, and one who asks his advice and takes it. Ram, he would ask advice from his ministers, or Dasarat and Ram also, and take their advice. He would get their advice. Ravana would ask advice but never take it. He wanted to hear whether they agreed with him or not by asking advice. That's all he did. And then there's people who think, I know everything, I'm a leader, why do I have to get advice? That's the worst kind. Even when they are advised about something they're doing wrong, they consider that person interfering with their plans, you know. So the best leader is one who asks his advice and takes it. But then, where to ask advice from people you feel that they're competent to give advice. So that's part of our society, to take advice. And that's good for sannyasis. Because sannyasis have a tendency to think, I'm a sannyasi. Everyone should get advice from me. That's why I got the stick. It means I advise you. And if you don't listen, boom. Not exactly like that, but anyway. But you know, we should always have people we can get advice from. People who are senior to us, or people who we completely trust and have respect for. So that's healthy. That's healthy. That's how people get it. I don't want to mention a name, but I can think of one leader who would never take advice and eventually fell. You know.
What color is the house?
I can't remember. I'm not sure he even lives in the house. I'll talk to you on the side. It's not good to try to broadcast another person's difficulties. Okay, so thank you very much. Srimad Bhagvatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you.